right, so I'm here with Debbie Maxwell, the manager of the retail store here in Cabot Cheese at Cabot, Vermont. Thank you for having us out here, Debbie.
You're welcome, our pleasure.
So, well, let's start off by talking about the history of the Cabot Cheese plant here.
Cabot was founded in 1919. A small group of farmers paid $5 and a quart of wood and started a co-op. And there were farms everywhere. Vermont now has less than 1,000 farms, and our town has probably fewer than 10 farms in it now. And they needed something to do with the milk. You can only drink so much milk, and they decided to make some cheese, found a cheesemaker that was extraordinaire, and we've been making cheese ever since. Added some cultured products like cottage cheese, yogurt, sour cream and dip, and some butter along the way. And each year we have some new products, some things that have returned or disappeared. When people come here, they get to try everything, just about everything that we make.
Oh, certainly. Would you like to maybe talk about some of the more unusual cheeses that people come here to find?
Smoky bacon is probably one that's really hot right now, and horseradish. Really? People can't seem to get anything that's hot enough, so horseradish kind of, it's not too hot, it's really good. And habanero, chipotle is another kind of smoky hot cheese. We have two hand-rubbed cheeses, which is kind of unique. One is Tuscan, which is kind of Italian herbs and spices.
All right.
The other one is called buffalo, so another hot cheese. Those are out to enjoy as well. We have cheese that's aged from maybe 2 months up to right now 5 years. We also have a cloth-bound cave-aged cheese, aged locally in man-made caves for about a year. It's amazing. It develops a natural rind on the outside. And we've won many, many awards for our new artisanal cloth-bound cave-aged.
That sounds really good, actually. Now, would you like to maybe talk about how you went from, just a handful of farms to the large co-op that you have now?
We're still pretty small, or we're about 1,200 farms. And unfortunately, we're losing farms left and right. The average size farm is only about 75 cows. So there are a lot of 30, 40, and 50 cow farms. That's not a lot when you think of other states that might have 1,000 or 2,000 or more. The farmers own the business. They are the only stockholders. So when there's a good year, profits go back to the farmers. The last 4 years have been profitable, not hugely, but it's always nice to get a little bonus check at the end of the year. And our farmers are very proud about what they do. They produce the very best milk that they can. Our workers here are very proud about what they do, and we get nice awards as a result of that. The most recent awards, the Cave Aged was a big winner last year, best in the world at the World Championships in Wisconsin. And just the past year here at the US Championships, our company got about 20 awards, and it's just across the board. Cottage cheese, butter. The big winners this past year were our 75 fat reduced. If you've never tasted a fat reduced cheese, it was good. Ours is really good. And the other one is called Hunter's Seriously Sharp. It's a black and red plaid. You might have seen it in your grocery store. That's what we use for our macaroni and cheese.
How many different types of cheese do you actually make out of all the milk and everything you get?
Basically 3 kinds of cheese.
Okay.
Cheddar, which is a cheese that ages, maybe 2 months up to about 5 years, sometimes a little bit longer. Monterey Jack, which is a good cooking cheese, similar to cheddar except a little high moisture, very slow to age, kind of strings when you cook with it, very versatile. And the third kind is fat reduced. We do a 50 and a 75 less fat than cheddar, and they taste good, and they're really good for cooking. Just have to be a little careful. No, not trying to cook them too quickly. Maybe shred it up a little, and it will work very well in any recipe. Mix it with a cheddar and cut your fat just a little bit. So it's very healthy for you. Everybody needs cheese. You know that a serving is an ounce, not the whole bar, right?
Well, you could have fooled me. They make it too delicious to just eat 1 ounce.
But then we flavor them as well. So cheddar, Might be aged mild, sharp, extra sharp. Private stock is our Cadillac, smooth and creamy and extra sharp. Vintage, a little older for somebody who wants a little older one. Seriously sharp, the one with a bite, good for cooking. And then there are flavored cheddars. Maybe the hand rubs, maybe, like I mentioned, habanero, horseradish, tomato basil, garlic and herb. Many, many different flavors. So in the cheddar line, you have a lot of variety depending on what you're cooking, or maybe just for snacking. The flavored cheeses also go over into the light line. And if you like to cook with a fat-reduced cheese, but you want a little pepper to it, maybe you want a jalapeno pepper in that.
Ooh, all right.
That's pretty yummy.
It sounds quite yummy. Now, you want to talk about maybe some of the other products you make here besides just cheese?
Absolutely. We call it our cultured line. Cottage cheese, yogurt, sour cream, and dips.
All right. So how do you go about making those separate from the cheese?
When we walk down the hallway, we'll look into the room, which is actually the packaging end of the cultured line. Cultured products take many more hours than cheddar to make. They're made in great big vats, and you'll see our nice little robot palletizing those products for us. About 5 days a week, we make cultured products. Usually Mondays is yogurt day. That does vary from day to day. And pretty much the production is based on what you have in inventory and what you're planning to sell. Of course, just like you would do that with cheese as well. Cheddar cheese is made about 6 days a week right now, about 20 vats a day, which would be about 20 hours a day.
Wow. And how much cheese does that end up turning out to be actually at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, well, it's about 4,000 pounds plus or minus per table, times 20 tables. When we pick up milk for our farms, we pick up in about a 60-mile radius. So we're making all of our products with local milk. But our distribution of our products, which used to be pretty much New England or the East Coast, is now national. Now, that's not to say in California you're going to find 20 kinds of cheese. You know, they might have 2 or 3. But we're in your major supermarket. Usually it's a dairy case. Sometimes it's those specialty cheese islands. So even if you went to a superstore, you should find us. Sometimes the packaging is slightly different, but if you recognize the Cabot logo, even if it's 25 feet of cheese, you may just see something in our Cabot line. We also do shredded cheese or sliced cheese if you prefer that kind, or you could cut it yourself from an 8-ounce bar, or maybe you're giving a gift of a 2 or 3 pound chunk of cheese. So we are now national, I believe at the moment, not international. It's pretty expensive to ship a refrigerated product. But we have been in the UK at different points. We've been in Mexico. So every once in a while somebody will say, oh, we find you. And so maybe there's a distributor or two that send it to a country that we don't necessarily know about. Now, if you were at Ben & Jerry's this afternoon, you could also go to our retail store that's just about a mile down the road.
Okay.
That's a lovely little complex, and they carry Vermont beer and wine.
Oh, all right.
As well as all the Cabot products. The extensive sampling that we have, they have as well. If you were going south, maybe down towards White River Junction, just on Route 4, towards Quechee and Woodstock, we have a lovely store there in that it's kind of used to be like an antique village, but now there are other stores, not just antique shops. We have the Anchor store in the middle. They also carry Vermont beer and wine and other Vermont products, just like the Waterbury store. We're the manufacturing plant, so we don't have Vermont beer and wine. But we do have toys and things that the traveling family would want. We get sometimes a little bit of a different kind of people here. We get a lot of families and school groups and people that want to do the experience. They want to do the tour. So we show a video, about 10 minutes, do a little talk, tell you about the new products, find out where you're from, what's your favorite cheese, take you on a walk, and let you experience it.
All right. You want to maybe explain the tour a little bit, just in case audio doesn't work so well?
Okay. Like I mentioned, we're making about 20 vats of cheese a day, about 4,000 pounds of cheese curd per table. They'll do that over 2 shifts, clean and sanitize and start over. So we bring milk into these large cookers. To the milk, we add a culture, rennet, which is a coagulant, and heat. And all the solids in the milk kind of coagulate. At that point, very sharp knives cut the product into curds. That's the solids, that's going to be your cheese.
Okay.
And whey, which is the byproduct. And we can talk about what we would do with whey. It's very usable in snack foods and baby formula. It's a byproduct of cheese making, but we can sell it. Then, after the product is cooked, we pump it over into a finishing table. As the curds and whey come in, the whey drains down the middle. When the whey is all gone, we'll salt the curd. If it's flavored at that point, add the habaneros or the garlic and herb or whatever and stir that in. In those finishing tables, you see a stirrer, kind of stirring the curd so that the whey can drain down the middle. And once all the salting and flavoring and the draining are done, the stirrer becomes a plow. It's just like a roof rake if you had snow on your roof. Not a lot of people know what that is, but we sometimes talk about that. Kind of looks like that. So we plow the curd into an auger. The curd is then vacuumed through red hoses up stainless steel tubes, filling 2 vertical towers. When the towers are full, about every minute and a half, a 42-pound block will come out of a tower into a plastic bag. Now at that point, it's really still curd. If you tried to cut that block up, it would fall apart. But in about 20 days, it all sticks together and it's a solid block. So we will now box it and put it away into a cooled aging facility. And then when it's time, the cheese grater will have tasted it all through its aging. Do we want sharp today? Oh no, this is not sharp enough. Let's put it away and age it longer. Or, oh no, this is really good. Let's package it as sharp today. And the cheese grater, or graters, make the decision when to package.
I probably grade an average of between 50 and 60 vats of cheese a day. Some days when we are off-site, we might grade up to 150 vats a day. You pull the plug out, the smell of it, to see what the odors are, and then you look at the plug to see what the body looks like, and then you flavor it.
Oh, all right. And that cave cheese you were talking about earlier, is there a nearby cave that you make it at? I'm sure you don't have one right on the premises.
Cabot is the cheesemaker. The milk is always from a select group of Holstein cows, always made the same way here. It's usually the first vat of the day. We're making, I believe, about 125 38-pound wheels a week. That's about 500 a month. After we make the cheese, it goes away to Greensboro, Vermont. It's less than 20 miles from here. Jasper Hill is the aging facility. A couple of young farmers who have many man-made caves or cellars now, but we were one of the first, if not the first, to age in their caves. So what they do is they put lard on the outside of these big wheels. When they get to the cave, they only have cheesecloth on them. There's no plastic wrap or anything to seal them. So they put the lard on it and they put the cheese away in their caves for about a year. Now they love them and they pat them and they turn them and they brush them. And about a year from now, they take that outside off and clean it up, and you have this wonderful natural rind cheese. Because it's not sealed, a natural rind forms on the outside, and you can see that very clearly. Now some people call that cave age, some call it bandaged, some call it cloth bound. It's all the same cheese. We sell it jointly with their name and our name on it. It's called Cellars, C-E-L-L-A-R-S, but it's really not a cave, it's a man-made cave.
Okay. All right. And is there anything else you'd like to tell people about Cabot?
Oh, I think we're a gem. We're kind of off the beaten path, but we have a really good time. This time of the year, we're open 7 days a week, 9 to 5. In the winter, our hours are shortened. In the month of January, we knock a day off. But most of the time we're here, people can call to find out if we're making cheese. We do tours whether we make cheese or not. And we have families and school groups and motor coaches and people that are working at or learning at the Culinary Institute. We never know. Every day is different. That's what makes it so cool.
Oh, certainly. And if somebody wanted to come up here for a tour from around Massachusetts, how would they go about getting in touch with you?
Well, we have a brochure. We have a website, cabotcheese.com. You can also go to a rest area, pick up our brochure, I'm sure. There's a free Vermont attractions map, lists all kinds of places you can visit in Vermont, and we're on there. And we're very accessible. Montpelier's only about a half an hour away. That's 89. And St. Johnsbury is the other direction off from Route 2. Route 2 connects the interstates, kind of, and that's where 91 and 93 are, and we're only 19 miles from St. Johnsbury. So even though it seems like we're a long ways away, if you were cutting across to, say, go to Stowe or to Ben & Jerry's or to Montpelier, you may very well be going across on Route 2. And we're off from Route 215, right in the village of Cabot. This is the only plant that you can visit. We also make cheese 90 miles away in Middlebury. And we have a cheese plant in New York State called Macadam, and we're all part of the same family.
Okay.
We each do our own thing.
Oh, that's pretty nice. It's gives each one their own little niche.
You can call us 800-837-4261.
Okay.
You can also, on the brochure, our driving directions, email address, phone number. We have tons and tons of the Vermont attractions maps out there and our own maps out there that's very clear, both with directions and how to contact us. We have an online mail order. If people would like to order online, you can also call the Visitors Center if there's something that you saw here that you wanted to order. We're not trying to be a catalog, but we do ship about once a week. And if a bus comes and you want to take cheese with you, we just put your cheese in a little paper bag, put it in a cooler, put it on your coach. If you're traveling in a car, the tinted windows of motor coaches and the air conditioning of cars make it easy to transport cheese. You can warm it up and cool it down. You really don't need to worry about that. I usually say to a motor coach, if you want to eat a dip, you better have a party tonight in your room because you're not going to be taking it with you. But hikers take cheese for a week or so out with them. Just need to be careful. You need to not let it get hot and stay hot. It will spoil eventually. But we have a great product that don't hesitate to take some home.
So I'm here with Justin McCarthy of the Magic Hat Brewery here in South Burlington, Vermont. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
Certainly, it's our pleasure. I'd like to probably start off, I guess, with maybe the history of the brewing company, if you would care to share that.
Yeah, back in 1994, 1995, two gentlemen by the names of Alan Newman and Bob Johnson sort of came up with the idea of starting a brewery in Burlington, and Bob and Alan had worked together at another local company, Seventh Generation, and the two of them had kind of parted ways and then came back together to start this business. So in 1995 they opened up on Flynn Avenue in Burlington, and from there, they started making Magic Hat Ale, which we now distribute as Humble Patience. One and the same beer. Bob, interestingly enough, had been, as it's been described, making beer in his bathtub, like many brewers that started in the mid-90s. A nice little anecdote with that is Bob, as it's been told to me, had hot water, cold water, and beer at his kitchen sink. So I think it was fitting that he went on to open Magic Hat Brewing Company. In 1998, Magic Hat kind of outgrew its first pair of shoes, and they moved from Flynn Avenue to the current location where we are right now in South Burlington. And part of the motivation there was they wanted to be able to bottle the product. At that point, it was draft only in Burlington, and they wanted to be able to distribute to a wider area. So they moved into this facility and bought a bottling line, and here we are. Geez, about 13 years later.
All right. And so you want to talk maybe about how you got into this business of, being a brewmaster here?
It's kind of random. I was actually pretty much just looking for work about 10 years ago, and I wandered into the brewery. It's a little bit longer story than that, but I wandered in and they offered me a job on the bottling line. So my first position here at Magic Hat was literally gluing cases shut and stacking them on pallets. From there, I asked the right questions of the right people and realized that I had an interest and a passion for making beer, and just have kind of ridden the wave from there. I really didn't know anything about the brewing process when I started here. I got fortunate that they were willing to give me a job, and I've tried to absorb as much as I can from day one. So it's kind of how I got my start in the brewing industry.
All right. And now that you're able to bottle and you have a wider distribution network, you want to talk about how it went from still being a Vermont specific beer to almost available on a national level now?
Yeah, I mean, it was a slow, methodical process. We never really want to start expansion too quickly, so Alan sort of took the mentality of we'll grow the local market and then take it out from there, and that's what we've been doing and still do. It's sort of the idea of we want to keep our core markets and the consumers that started with us happy, but we also want to be able to introduce the beer to new places and new people. So we sort of balance that focus on how many new markets versus developing would you say mature markets would be.
So clearly it's been a very successful expansion of your distribution network and new brewery here. So you want to talk about maybe some of the ingredients that you use to make such a high quality beer here?
Sure, we use ingredients actually from all over the world, and as you know, Magic Hat, we're kind of known for being a little bit off the wall with some of our libations. So that allows us to source ingredients. For example, we have whole vanilla beans that we use in Ravel, which is in the Winterland variety pack this year. And those vanilla beans come from Australia, and I believe some of them are actually grown in the Indonesia. So vanilla beans come from those climates. Our malt, for the most part, our bulk malt comes from North America. It's a Canadian-grown malt, malted by an American company. A lot of our specialty malts we source either from the Midwest or from England, with a couple others coming from Germany. It sort of depends on the variety. Almost 100%, I'd probably say 95% of our hops come from the Pacific Northwest. So that's a U.S. grown product. It's probably one of the largest hop growing regions in the world. So it's a kind of a nice thing to be able to get there. The other 5% we typically will source from either the UK or Germany. Our yeast we get in-house. That's something that we've been using since the brewery opened. So we've been fortunate enough in our process to be able to reuse our yeast almost continuously. And the water we get right here from Lake Champlain. So that's probably the biggest ingredient in any beer.
Certainly. Now, you want to talk about maybe how you combine some of those ingredients to make some of your more specialty beers, like your seasonal items? And
sure. I mean, I guess with any recipe, you're sort of, at least with my approach, is sort of try and take the idea of what you think you want to get out flavor-wise, and then kind of backtrack from there and say, well, if I want beer X to taste like this, how am I going to get there, and what ingredients do I need? So sort of from there, back off and create a malt bill, and then we always like to use interesting ingredients. So if we can source a new hop variety or a different hop variety, we'll look into that. Some of the more off-the-wall ingredients just kind of comes from the brainstorming process. We use beets in the Wacko, which is our summer seasonal. the vanilla beans that I mentioned earlier, and that's sort of just something where we kind of, what crazy things can we try out in beer, and what works and what doesn't, and we've seen success, and sometimes you try an ingredient and it just doesn't work out, but that's sort of the fun thing with beer is you can always see what happens.
Oh yeah, trying new things is always, an important step to discovering a great new flavor. So you want to talk maybe about how everything runs here, maybe how you take the hops and the malt and turn it into such a delicious beverage?
Sure, I can run you through the process a little bit. We currently receive our bulk malt via truck, which comes in ultimately on rail cars from the northern plains there in Canada. And from there, we store our bulk malt in silos just outside the brewery. And when we're ready to create another beer, we actually will run that bulk malt through a mill, and that allows us to get at the starchy endosperm, the inside of the malted barley kernel, which is going to contain the enzymes and the starch and sugar that we want to ultimately have in our beer and in our fermentation. From there, the malted barley, bulk malt barley, and also specialty malts, which will provide color and additional flavor and body to the beer. We mix with hot water in the mash kettle. Typically, we're looking for, depending on the style of beer and what you're trying to get out of the beer, you can mash at different temperatures. So that's essentially what we're creating there when we're mixing grain with hot water is a mash. It's like an oatmeal, a porridge type substance. Okay. And what we're doing there is we're reactivating the enzymes that the maltster got ready for us. And those enzymes are going to convert the starch into sugar molecules that ultimately becomes food for the yeast. And that's where the yeast is what we really get our beer from. I think in the brewing world, and especially at Magic Hat, we have a saying that says, the brewers make wort, yeast is what actually makes beer. So we're just essentially facilitating something for the yeast to be able to grow and multiply. And once we're done with the mashing process, which takes about an hour, we'll transfer the mash into what's called the lauter tun. And the lauter tun works similar to a coffee filter in that we're trying to separate the solid material, i.e. the grain, from the liquid, which is now what we call wort. It's a sweet water. It's essentially a sugar water. And in that, with the sugar water, we'll run that off into the wort kettle. The spent grain, which is left over in the lauter tun, we actually send outside, and currently we're sending it down the road to cattle farms, feed for the dairy cows. Hopefully within the next 6 months we'll be sending the majority of our spent grain to an anaerobic digester, which we'll be able to create methane gas with and ultimately fire a generator to be able to power the brewery with. So that's kind of a cool prospect in that being able to keep the brew system kind of a closed system environmentally. We're able to reuse a lot of the products later
almost
on.
Self-sustaining almost.
Yeah, almost. It's not quite there, but it's close. But once once we've separated the sweet water from the solid grain material, we end up with, as I said, wort, W-O-R-T, in the kettle, and this is where we do our boil, the brew, so to speak. This is where we'll add our hops. We're also evaporating off some of the water that's in solution to concentrate those sugars just a little bit more. We'll also see some darkening reactions, and a little bit of science behind it with protein coagulation and just sort of getting rid of things that we may not want in terms of aromatics that are residual in the malt themselves. From there, we transfer the wort to a whirlpool, and that'll help separate out the solid hop material from the liquid. And after about a half an hour, we'll transfer from the whirlpool into the fermentation tank. And that's where in that process, during the transfer, we'll cool the wort down to fermentation temperature, which is typically anywhere between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the style of beer we're brewing. And we'll also add our yeast at that point in the process.
Okay.
Along with the yeast, we're also adding some oxygen to be able to help the fermentation take, because fermentation is an anaerobic process, but yeast is an aerobic organism, so we need to be able to help facilitate its growth
Okay.
by adding a little bit of air to the wort.
And then about how long after that till you get the finished product usually?
Depending on the product, anywhere between 10 to 14 days.
Okay.
It's typically what we're looking at from start to finish. So,
All right. So, well, how many bottles are you actually able to produce out of this facility every day then?
ooh, that's a tough question for me. We do about 330 bottles a minute, and we run for probably about 20 hours a day. So if you do the math out, it's probably somewhere in the range of 600 to 800,000 bottles a day.
Wow. And they all go out all over the country? Straight from
Currently,
here?
we're distributing, I believe, in 33 states.
Okay.
We're as far west. Actually, we do have some small distribution in Southern California. Actually, in San Francisco as well, which is a fairly new market.
Okay.
But beyond that, it's pretty much everything east of the Mississippi, including Texas and also Minnesota. So we've come quite a ways from when I started, where I think we distributed to 4 states.
All right. So you want to talk about your upcoming winter varieties that are coming up?
Sure. The Winterland pack we're really excited about this year. We got a couple of old favorites and actually some flavor flashbacks, as we like to call them.
Okay.
So the first off is Revel, which is a beer that if you've been a Magic Hat fan for a long time, you'll remember. It's a vanilla bean porter, which, you know, it's a really nice porter with just the added subtle vanilla flavor, which I think is really delicious. And I started here about 10 years ago, and it was one of my first beers that I really enjoyed for Magic Hat. Also in the winter variety pack, we have Howl, which is a black as night winter lager, which is a really nice light to medium bodied, easy drinking dark beer. So if you're not quite a dark beer fan, I recommend Howl. Just might change your mind a little bit. We also have Encore returning for the second year in a row. It's part of the IPA on Tour series. And that's a really delicious IPA that we brew with a large percentage of the wheat malt and also Simcoe and Amarillo hops, which are 2 of the new hip varieties on the craft brewing scene. And then we've got the time-tested favorite of Number 9, which I don't think you can really go wrong with a bottle of Number 9.
What's your favorite beer that you make here?
Blind Faith.
Blind Faith?
Yep.
What gives it the flavor that you enjoy?
I like hops.
Okay.
We use Cascade hops in that beer. It's kind of the quintessential craft brewer's hop, or at least it was through the 90s. That may be changing these days, but the other thing I like about Blind Faith is that it has a very hop forward flavor profile, but it has a nice malt background and malt body to back up that hoppiness. So you've got a little bit of residual sweetness in there to help balance those hops out.
Okay. So what really separates you from your competition?
It's a great beer that we make. We like to have fun making it. I think one thing that I like to say at Magic Hat is, like, we know how to party, or throw a good party, I should say. It's probably a little better way to say it.
All right.
And we really enjoy what we do, and I think the passion that I see day to day among the staff is, kind of above and beyond what you can run into at other workplaces, and that's, I think, really what makes our product, that much different, that much better. I mean, you can get into the dynamic of raw materials and ingredients, but I think really the mindset of the brewer and the people making the beer really, especially with our brand, kind of translates through. So when you see someone drinking Magic Hat, they're having a good time, and when you see somebody making Magic Hat, they're having a good time as well. So
So it's, not really as much about the machines as maybe larger manufacturers, but it's really more people focused here.
Yeah, I would say so. One of the best parts about my job is the people that I work with. So I think you can see that day to day when you come to the brewery. People are excited about it, and they're excited to be able to share it with the outside world.
Oh, certainly. And if somebody wanted to come up here, maybe take a tour, come to the gift shop, how would they go about getting a hold of you?
I believe there are a number of ways. We're online at magichat.net, which probably has the most information about our brand and the tours and just the different things going on around the country involving Magic Hat. So that's always a good place to check. You can also call 802-658-2739, and that'll get you right into the Artifactory, and they've got tour times and things like that. The store's open 7 days a week. I believe in the summertime they're open from 10 to 7, in the winter it's 10 to 6. We offer tours Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and also on Sunday afternoon. And the Artifactory, we also have a nice tour ramp, so if you can't make it in over the weekend, you can take a self-guided tour and come up and see the facility. And the upside to come in on a Monday or Tuesday is that the bottling line's running and you can see us in action. So there's always the opportunity to check things out. And naturally, we've got a wide selection of beers on tap, so I think that's why we're all here.
Oh, certainly. I'm sure this is probably the place to come if you're a big fan of Magic Hat to get the freshest beer.
Yeah, I would say so.
All right, I'm here with Chris Wilkins, the factory tour manager here at Ben & Jerry's here in Waterbury, Vermont. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
I guess we'll start off by maybe talking a little bit about the history of the company and how it got started.
Well, basically, Ben & Jerry met in 8th grade gym class in Merrick, Long Island, and after a few failures in college and not really knowing what they wanted to do, they decided they wanted to do something with ice cream. So they opened up a small gas station shop in Burlington, and we built this factory in 1986.
Oh, all right. And I'm sure there's been a huge increase in demand since you first started this production place. Have you had to make several additions over the years, or?
In terms of the building here in itself, I mean, this building was built in '86, and we max out at about 250,000 pints a day here. Once we realized we exceeded this capacity, we had a second factory in Springfield, Vermont. A third factory was built in St. Albans, Vermont. We've since closed the Springfield factory and expanded the St. Albans factory. So there's 2 large factories here in Vermont now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure with all the new flavors you guys are coming out with all the time, it's hard to keep up with the demand, I'm sure. You want to talk about maybe how you come up with some of those flavors?
Sometimes the new flavors, customers come up with some of the new flavors. Cherry Garcia was a customer suggested flavor. Chunky Monkey, Chubby Hubby, those are all from customers. But if it's not coming from a customer, we have our own R&D team up in South Burlington at our corporate offices. We have test kitchens there, and they can whip up small batches and go wherever they want to go with it.
So at this location here, you're probably most known for the tours, I'm assuming.
Yep, this is the biggest tourist attraction actually in the state of Vermont, and we had about 320,000 people take the tour last year.
Oh, wow. Sure, even more probably are planned for this year.
Oh, yeah.
Now, about how many do you do a day?
Depending on the time of year, a day like today during peak foliage season, we may do around 1,800, 2,000. In the summer, we max out at about 2,500 people a day.
Oh, wow. And so you want to kind of walk us through maybe what we can expect to see on the tour?
Yeah, so if you sign up for the tour, it's a 3-part tour. You'll start off with a really quick movie to give you a little history about Ben & Jerry, just about 6 minutes long. Then we'll take you out into a mezzanine that overlooks the whole factory. You'll watch him make the ice cream if it's a production day. Your tour guide will walk you through the whole process, explain how we make the ice cream, and then we finish it off in our flavor room with a sample of the day.
Oh, all right.
Which could be anything.
Sounds very exciting. I can't wait to go check it out. You want to maybe tell everybody a little bit, maybe something they don't know about Ben & Jerry's up here? Or?
Something they don't know about Ben & Jerry's up here. Wow. It seems like everybody knows everything about Ben & Jerry's. And I've been here 20 years, and it seems like sometimes people know more than I know about Ben & Jerry's. Something they don't know about us. Wow, I don't know. You really stumped me on that one. Let me get back to that. Let me think about this.
So what would you really like people to take away from coming here and seeing the tour and everything?
I think it's just, just come away with the fact that it's really a small, success story that grew. I mean, it's kind of the American dream. Ben & Jerry's started off with a good idea, not much money, and look where it turned out to be, multi-million-dollar business. And it's a business that gives back to the community. So whether it's through our community action teams going out and doing products or donating money to various groups, it's a great success story.
Oh yes, I'm sure it's very inspirational to other businesses around the area, especially. Do you use a lot of, you want to talk maybe about where you get your ingredients from? You use a lot of local ingredients?
Yep, in terms of our ingredients locally, there's pretty few things we can get locally. All our milk and cream comes from the St. Albans Dairy Co-op up in St. Albans, Vermont. So there's all local milk. We get our cookie dough from a company up in Burlington, Rhino Foods. Otherwise, that's about all you can really get in Vermont. Maybe
not many cherries.
If we're doing not a lot of cherries in the state of Vermont, not exactly the banana belt here. So growing season of about 6 days. So fruits and nuts coming from the southeast, California. We look for socially responsible companies to supply our ingredients for us. And maple syrup. We can get all our maple syrup in Vermont. So.
Of course. Now, is there any other particular draw for people to come here other than just the tour?
One of the big draws here is the Flavor Graveyard. Ooh. If you've never been to the Flavor Graveyard, we have an actual graveyard on site with tombstones up on the hill, remembering some of our dearly departed flavors that really weren't very good. We have holy cannoli up there, dastardly mash, peanuts and popcorn.
Well,
they seem
at
like
least
a good
they're
idea
trying
at the time.
something.
We're trying. So.
So you want to talk maybe about some of the specific flavors you offer and some of the ones that maybe didn't make it?
Well, in this factory, we offer every single flavor we produce. So anything available in a scoop shop that we sell to scoop shops, we offer here. Any pint flavors that we produce are offered here, and that can be up to 50 different flavors. A lot of things, we've discontinued over 300 flavors over the years, so not everyone's a success. There are some flavor bombs out there. Sugar plum was probably the biggest disaster of all time. Seemed like a good idea at the time. There's a plum ice cream with a plum ice cream with a caramel swirl. I think we probably sold about 6 pints of that. It was just bad stuff. But peanuts and popcorn, which I mentioned, that was not so good. So there's definitely a lot of flavors out there that haven't made it.
So you want to give us a quick walkthrough of how you actually produce the ice cream from, milk and everything else?
Yeah, I'll just give you the quick rundown here. So we start off with what we call a base mix, which is just your milk, cream, sugar, egg yolks, and 2 stabilizers. That'll be blended up for a few minutes. All the mix then gets pasteurized, homogenized. It'll get sent to what's called our tank room, which is just a refrigerated holding room for the mix. Okay. Once we're ready to turn that mix into ice cream, the next step will be to flavor it. So say we're making Cherry Garcia. It then gets pumped out into the production room, and we'll add the cherry juice for the liquid flavoring. Any kind of flavorings will be added, so your cherry juice, strawberry juice, any kind of cinnamons, things like that. So whatever your base flavoring is. Once it's flavored, we're then going to cool it down to a soft serve consistency of about 22 degrees in our freezers. And that's done strictly so we can add the chunks.
Okay.
Because if you added your chunks before, the mix is too thin and they'll sink. If you get it too cold, the chunks just sit on top. So 22, you add your chunks and they stay right where you want them to go. And after it's brought down to 22, we add those chunks. So your cherries or your chocolate for Cherry Garcia go in. And then it gets put into the pint containers at 22 degrees. We have what are called rotary fillers here. Our filling lines fill 2 cups at a time. And we can run 2 flavors at a time in this factory and produce up to 250,000 a day. And then once it's packaged, it's just about a 2-hour freezing process at 40 degrees below zero. And then we package them up in sleeves of 8 and ship that stuff right out of here.
All right, and it all goes straight to my house.
Straight to your house. There you go. And we thank you for that.
I'm here with Gail Albert of Shelburne Vineyard out here in Shelburne, Vermont. And thank you for having us out here.
Oh, we're happy to have you.
It's a beautiful place you have here,
Thanks.
I must say.
Thanks.
How long have you had this?
Well, there are 2 ends to the story. We started growing grapes here in Vermont in 1998. but built this building only about 3.5 years ago. So we were working in leased space. We still have some of those leased fields, but these we own, and about 3.5 years ago we built this building.
Oh, wow. So how much land do you own out here?
This is a plot of about 14 acres, of which we have about 3.5 to 4 planted in grapes, and the rest is just a kind of wooded margin that we've kept natural.
Oh, it absolutely is beautiful out here, I must say. I'm sure it's even better on a sunny day. But.
It's beautiful any day.
So with all those grapes, about how much wine do you actually get out of it?
Well, we plant, we've got the 3.5 to 4 acres here. We've got 3 acres that we lease from Shelburne Farms and 3 acres from another farm, as well as about 5 acres in the next town that we've planted over the course of the last year that aren't producing yet, but probably will by next year.
All right. So it should be all sorts of new varieties coming out next year? Or?
Well, more of the same. We've finally found the varieties that really thrive here and make a great wine in the cold climates that we have. We make about 35 to 40,000 bottles a year at this point, and we're aiming to get to about 50,000.
All right. So what types of wine do you make here?
Well, primarily we're growing these brand new hybrid grapes that are crosses between European wine grapes and Midwestern native grapes. And what makes those really good is that they've got the wine qualities of the European grapes, but they've got the cold hardiness of the Midwestern grapes. And so the vines that you see here do well even if it gets to 30 below zero, which is something we haven't experienced yet, but we've come close.
Certainly, so you don't have to worry about your crops in the winter or anything like that.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not anytime soon. That would be a little cold.
Yeah.
So what else do you all do out here?
Well, we're primarily in the business of growing grapes and making wine. But we do have a tasting room where we have the opportunity to let people taste the wines. Little shopping, we try to keep it stocked with some local types of specialty products, primarily local products. And we try to give people a good time, some tours, help explain the winemaking process, and let them enjoy themselves. And then the other thing that we do, since we've built this building, we built it in a way so that we can also host private events, and we do things like nonprofit events or weddings or rehearsal dinners, showers, birthday parties, special things like that.
Oh, that's really nice. So I noticed you've won plenty of awards for your wines. Would you like to talk about those a little bit?
I love to talk about that. Yeah. Every year there are a lot of different awards competitions that are opportunities for you to do. They ask you to send a number of your bottles of wine and a number of examples of each variety that you send. And then a panel of judges, usually in a blind tasting, which means they don't know whose wine it is, will go through and taste the wines and make their individual comments. And then at the end of the competition, they gather together the comments and select the wines that are to be chosen for awards. And we've been fortunate. We've won a number of gold and silver medals and bronze medals, and also we've taken a few double gold medals, which means that 100% of the judges has voted your wine at a certain high level. Oh, wow. And so these Marquette grapes that you see here are the ones that I was telling you about earlier that just took best red wine in the international cold climate grape competition, and that also received a double gold medal.
Oh, wow.
So, and we've had double golds on some of our other wines as well in past years. That's always something to be particularly proud of.
Oh, certainly. I didn't even know such a thing even existed. So
yeah, well, you learn as you come through this this adventure that we're doing. You learn the tricks of the trade, and you learn how to make the wines better each year, I guess.
Oh, certainly. How long did it actually take you guys to really get the wine process to where you liked it?
Well, I think it's always a learning process, and we continue to learn every year. That Marquette that we took the award with last year, we used a new process called Solar Eclipse, where you actually leave some of the yeast cells in the wine during the fermentation process and during the aging process, and it helps to give the wine a really special flavor.
All right.
And that was something that we learned last year from other colleagues, from reading we've done. And so it's always a learning process, and there's always a new challenge.
Oh yes, there's always something new around the corner. So what would you say is your favorite wine here?
Oh, that's a tough one. I tend to be a white wine person. I love our Lakeview White, which is one of our standard wines. It's a semi-dry wine that's very easy to sip. In fact, we have a picture of an Adirondack chair on the label because it just makes you want to sit back and enjoy it. I love our ice wines, which is a real specialty that we can do here in Vermont that you can't get from California or somewhere else because it doesn't get cold enough. And surprisingly, although I'm a white wine person, I love our Marquette. It has a really mellow, soft taste with nice soft tannins and a really big mouthfeel. Lots of nice fruitiness and smokiness from the oak barrels, and it's just a really nice, enjoyable wine.
Oh, it sounds delicious. Now, if other people wanted to try your wines or come up here and take a tour for themselves, how could they get in touch with you?
Well, we have a wonderful website, and actually it's a great place for people who might be thinking of getting into this wine experience themselves, because we give a lot of information on how we grow the wines. Our website is www.shelburnevineyard.com, and they can also reach us by phone, they can reach us by phone at area code 802-985-8222, and we have a Facebook page under Shelburne Vineyard.
Oh, all right.
So there's
all
lots of
sorts
good information. Yep.
Now, you want to go ahead and let's take a look around?
Absolutely. These are grapes that we picked, I think, yesterday, and will be pressed this afternoon. These are some of the Marquette grapes. And what we do once we get these grapes here is we'll hoist this box up onto this structure here that we've built to help us with that. Somebody gets up there with them. And then if you want to come down here, this is the first step in the process. I mentioned to you earlier the crusher destemmer, and this is that machine. And if you actually look inside, you can see that there's a big auger inside of a cylinder that has holes in it, and the auger pushes those ripe bunches of grapes through the cylinder, and the grapes fall through the holes and the stems go out the other end. And then we take those stems and we eventually compost them and feed them back to the grapes. If we're making a white wine, then we'll take the grapes that come out of here and pump them directly into this tank. We call this tank fondly Lucy, after that I Love Lucy episode that everybody asks about. So this is our press. And the press will hold about 6,000 pounds of grapes. And if you look around to this side of it, you'll see that there are some holes in the stainless steel. And inside in the middle of this tank is a big membrane that seals off one half of the tank from the other. And we introduce compressed air behind that membrane. And the pressure of that air pushes the grapes against that sort of sieve that's on the other side. This tank begins to rotate and the juice drips out into the receptacle in the bottom. And then we take the juice from there and pump it directly into the stainless steel tanks that are inside the winery. And that's where we introduce the yeast, and the fermentation begins. If we're making a red wine, the process is a little bit different. We will take the red grapes right from the crusher destemmer and put them into the big tanks inside, and we'll introduce the yeast right onto the skins and the whole grapes that are sitting there. And that process, the fermentation itself, then will extract the color and the tannins from the skins that give red wines their character and that little bit of sort of more intense, almost harshness that you get on the edge of a red wine. And it's the aging process, once we move that red wine from the stainless steel to the oak, that allows that harshness to soften and gives you that wonderful quality of a good red wine. So these are the stainless steel tanks that we use. If you look at this band around the middle of the tank, this is actually a cooling jacket. And it means that each one of these tanks that you see this band around has its own little refrigeration system. And that serves a lot of different purposes. Number one, when the fermentation is actually happening, it's a very vigorous process. You put your ear next to this tank and it almost sounds like a seashell roaring. And it can create a lot of heat, and you don't want to be cooking that wine. So we lower the temperature a bit to be able to maintain an even tempo of fermentation. You don't want it to go too fast. You don't want it to go too slow. You want it to be just right. It's kind of like the Three Bears. And then the other point at which this is helpful is that when the fermentation is complete, when we're ready to stop it, when we know that we've converted as much of the sugar in the wine as we want to into alcohol, then we can drop the temperature down to somewhere in the mid-20s, and that kills off the yeast cells and stops the fermentation and allows the wine to stabilize at that level. And then while we're aging the wine, this allows us to keep the temperature at a stable level so that the wine stays nice and fresh and still tastes good when it's time for you to drink it.
That's pretty sweet.
For the red wines, once we've gotten it through the fermentation process, we'll move it to age in these oak barrels that you see here. Many of these are empty at this point, waiting for this year's crop to get ready to go in there, because we'll age it first, we'll ferment it first in the stainless steel before we move it into the oak barrels to age. And then the next step, once the aging is complete, is bottling. And this is our bottling line, which is at rest now. It's on vacation. But when we're ready to bottle the wine, we will pump the wine into this container here, and we'll set up a little table here that allows us to feed the bottles onto this conveyor. The bottles move along until they get to this point where we inject a little carbon dioxide into it to be able to expunge any air that's in the bottle and keep the wine nice and fresh. And then each bottle gets picked up by one of these spigots and gets filled. This little gadget here that you see hanging vertically will adjust the amount of wine that's in the bottle so that you have just the right amount under the cork. And then the cork goes right in here. You can see that post that's going to plunge the cork into the bottle. And then the bottles move along to this point. When they get here, a sensor will note that it's there and drop off one of these capsules right onto the top of it. It'll get tapped down right here by this little gadget here. And then this is heated up like a little hair dryer, and it just kind of shrink wraps the capsule onto the bottle and moves along to here where these gears start rolling, and a label comes off and gets compressed onto the bottle as the bottle turns around, and then we capture it over here, and it's ready to be drunk or to be boxed. Usually we'll let it rest for a little while after it's been bottled before we release it for sale.